welcome to today's webcast, Tableau 10.5 and Beyond, What to Expect in 2018. My name is Laura Haas, and I am a Business Intelligence and Analytics Consultant at Thorogood. I've worked with a variety of different business intelligence technologies, including Tableau. I was also lucky enough to attend Tableau Conference 2017, and I'm excited to share some of the new features and enhancements coming in 2018 as part of today's webcast. Feel free to get in touch with me via the contact details on the screen if you wish to have a longer discussion about today's topic. Before we jump into content, I'd like to give a brief overview of today's agenda. I will start by giving an introduction to Thorogood, then move right into reviewing the Tableau 10 releases we've seen over the last year and key functionality that came with each release. Then we'll move into demo-led sections covering Tableau 10.5 beta and what is coming in 2018, including Project Maestro. For those of you unfamiliar with Thorogood, we are an independent consulting firm specializing in business intelligence and analytics solutions. We have been delivering value to our customers for over 25 years. Thorogood operates as a single organization serving our customers globally and often working in a leveraged team across our offices in New York, Philadelphia, London, Bangalore, and Singapore. All of our consultants are recruited and trained in the same way to develop a unique mix of business understanding, technical excellence, and analytical ability. We provide a full range of services to support your business goals, covering the end-to-end lifecycle of any project, from initial strategy and roadmap definitions to requirements gathering, design and implementation of complex systems, through training and support of business users. We also provide ongoing data or analytics services, as well as planning and business modeling solutions. Our clients typically span four verticals: consumer goods, pharmaceutical and health services, banking, and insurance. Our clients are some of the leading organizations in these sectors, and we take a lot of pride in the long-standing relationships we have fostered with some of the names that you see on the screen. These organizations are large, complex businesses, and we rely on our thorough business understanding and deep technical expertise to deliver successful solutions to their business challenges. In terms of technologies we work with, we are an independent consulting firm, meaning we don't work with one specific technology. We do, however, work and partner with many of the key players across the market in order to provide our clients with the solution that best suits their needs. Our Tableau practice and partnership was initiated in 2012, and it's been an exciting ride. Since that time, we've established Thorogood as a member of the Tableau's Partner Advocacy Board, a strategic alliance partner in Tableau's Allegiance program, and were named Partner of the Year in Europe, Middle East, and Africa region in 2014. We have over 85 consultants with Tableau development and delivery experience, including its integration with other technologies such as Salesforce, Teradata, AWS, and many more. If you have any questions about Thorogood or the services we offer, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now, without any further ado, let's talk about Tableau. Over the last year or so, we've seen some significant releases from Tableau. Since they've committed to quarterly releases, we are seeing great new functionality frequently. This can raise questions such as, which release is right for my organization? What is the proper upgrade strategy? Or how is the compatibility with prior versions of Tableau? All of these are valid, and we hope sharing some of our favorite features from each release will help with these considerations. If you have more specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Let's get started with last August with the release of 10.0. Two of the biggest features that came with 10.0 were cross-database joins and cross-data source filters. These features allow more flexibility in bringing together disparate data sources right in Tableau and addresses the fact that organizations are complex and have data spread all over the place. Additionally, Tableau enhanced their analytics offering with k-means clustering, available directly in the tool. Another one of our favorite features is the increased number of data sources, including connections to Google Sheets. Then in November, we got version 10.1, which enhanced subscriptions on Tableau Server to be conditional. This feature is further enhanced in later versions, 10.3 specifically. Additionally, the ability to modify the same dashboard to render differently for different devices became available in Tableau Desktop. Unions, which were introduced in 9.3, also saw some enhancements, allowing for wildcard search. Earlier this year, we saw some additional releases. So Tableau 10.2 in February introduced new aggregation functions, correlation, and covariance, as well as the ability to create joins using custom calculations. One feature we really like is the ability to use multiple legend per measure. So if you create a chart with multiple different measures and want to color them differently, that's now available in 10.2. In May, Tableau 10.3 enhanced data-driven alerts and sends emails when data reaches a certain threshold. So if you wanted to be alerted when your sales drop below a certain number, you can set up a rule on Tableau Server to do so. There's also the ability to use PDFs as a data source and use your tooltips to highlight similar data points depending on the category or dimension you hover over. Tableau Bridge was also made available as a limited release, which allows for live connections to on-premise data sources when using Tableau online. Just a few months ago, Tableau 10.4 was made available. 10.5 is now in beta, and we can expect a release at the end of this year or early next year. Additionally, Project Maestro will be coming at some point in 2018, with the beta just released a few weeks ago. We will be covering these releases in a bit more detail, so I won't highlight any features now. If you want to see the full list of features available in each release, the information is available on Tableau's website at the link on this slide. Taking a closer look at 10.4 features, which is available now, we have some new features in Desktop and Server. In Desktop, we now have the ability to connect to the data virtualization tool Denodo. Additionally, linear geometry shapefiles are now supported, so you can visualize custom networks such as hiking trails or pipelines. In 10.4, we can also integrate with MATLAB for predictive models and data source. UI enhancements are also available, including high resolution and more options for dashboard spacing. On the server side, we have the ability to now certify published data sources. Additionally, Server will recommend data sources powered by machine learning. Enhance your user collaboration with viz snapshots as a part of commentary. I'll show this in a bit in a demo. Additionally, in 10.4, there is the ability to publish to older versions of Server, so long as it's 10.2 or higher. This is useful if your organization has a more updated version of Tableau Desktop than the Server. In Tableau 10.5, there is a lot of great functionality and features available on the way. Some of the most exciting include Hyper, viz and tooltips, and improved workbook version compatibility. Server will be available on Linux and have improved content control and web authoring. I've already talked quite a bit, and a lot of this functionality is easier to show. So let's see some of this stuff in action. So I'm going to jump over to Tableau 10.5. Which, as I mentioned, is in beta. And I have a blank workbook here that obviously looks very similar to Tableau Desktop. So if I go to data source, I'm going to create a new data source here. And something that was interesting for me was Spotify data. As the year kind of winds down, I wanted to see what some of the top streaming songs and artists were in 2017. So I have this Spotify streaming data that I was able to pull online. And it's just in the CSV format. And I'm also going to add in some additional information here. So you'll have seen here that I also have a country listing and album releases. So the country listing, Spotify abbreviates each of the countries to the two-letter abbreviation. So this country list will help me in mapping to the geocoding available in Tableau. So I'm going to map region to country ID here. And I'm going to left join that so that I don't lose any of my fact data. And I'm also going to add in the album releases because I want to start to look and see if there's any relationship between an artist's streams and if they've released an album during the year. And again, I'm going to left join so I don't lose any of that fact data. So right now I have a live connection, and if I go to my worksheet here and start to pull on some things such as number of records, we can see that I get a little bit of loading. It's processing for the first time. And this data source is over 2 million records, so it's a larger data source. So it's going through its process here, and I can see my number of records, and maybe I want to pull in some date dimensionality and I can again see that I'm getting the loading icon. So it's a little bit slow with a live connection, and this data I know is not going to be updated. So I'm actually going to toggle back and create an extract. So people may be familiar with extracts previously and the TDEs that they create. Well, now in 10.5, it's all being powered by Hyper, which is the new data extract engine. So if I click off of that, I'm going to be asked to create a new data source. And what you'll see here is it's exactly the same as how I've created extracts before, but the file type is now something called Hyper. So this is something to keep in mind if you are using older versions of Tableau. This won't be available yet, and you won't be able to necessarily use these connections in those older versions. But we'll start to see a lot of performance improvement with the Hyper extract. So I'm going to save that, and Tableau is going to take a second to actually process this. So at the keynote at Tableau Conference, a gentleman actually did kind of a showdown of Tableau 10.4 extract and Tableau 10.5 extract. And when you're using a lot of large volumes of data, there are noticeable performance differences, both in creating your extract initially, but also using it to build out your dashboards and visualizations. So interested to really put Hyper to the test in Tableau 10.5. So as this loads here, I started thinking about some of the interesting intersections of data that I might want to look at. So while number of records in year aren't that relevant, potentially the number of streams over months would be. So I'm going to drag these off. I'll keep year here, and I'm going to actually change it to month. And I'm going to drag on streams to my rows. And we can see everything's happening very quickly here. So I have this visualization. It's helpful for me to see my streams over time, but I actually want to start to look at some artist information. So I'm going to create a second worksheet here, and I'm going to drag on artist. And as you can see, there's a lot of artists here, and that happened very quickly for me. And drag on streams, and I'm going to sort this. And not too surprising, Ed Sheeran was the top streaming artist on Spotify this year. He released an album and was quite popular with some of his songs. So I have this information, and I'm happy with it, but I want to actually look and see, how did Ed Sheeran stream over time? Was it the release of his new album that caused that, caused a large number of streams here, or has he always been popular? So in previous versions of Tableau, I would create a dashboard, drag my worksheets on, and enable filter actions. So I use filter actions all of the time in what I do, and I think they're really valuable. You can enable them to kind of show and hide content if you want to save some space, but ultimately you are taking up real estate on your dashboard. So if I click on Ed Sheeran here, now I can see, okay, January and February, pretty stable months, and then March, which is when his album was released, there was quite an increase in his streams. So this is helpful, but again, takes up a lot of dashboard space. In Tableau 10.5, I'm now going to have the ability to use Vision Tooltip. So if I go to Tooltip here, hit Enter, where I usually have Insert, where I can incorporate different like dimensions or measures, I now have this option of Sheet. So I can select Sheet 1, and I have some parameters that I can control, such as the max width, max height, as well as the filter. So if you have multiple dimensions on a visualization and you only want to pass some of them to the viz that's in the tooltip, you can control that here as well. Because I only have artists, I'm fine with passing all filters. I'm going to click OK. So now what will happen is if I hover over any of my artists here, the visualization dynamically updates based on the artist information for their streaming data. So this is really helpful for me on a dashboard where I don't necessarily always need to see the trend, but could want to see the trend at some point. All right. So additionally, I might want to publish this viz or a nicer dashboard to Tableau server. So if I go to server and I can see that I'm signed in, we have Tableau Online, and I'm signed into our 10.4 server, which is just our company name. So if I go to publish this workbook, now granted this is all being done in 10.5, I get this message here that the server that I'm trying to publish to is running an older version of Tableau than my desktop. So the workbook would be downgraded and may lose some functionality. So that viz and tooltip, I would probably lose that if I publish that to 10.4. That being said, it's not preventing me from publishing in the first place. So this is a 10.4 functionality that was introduced that I can actually publish newer versions of desktop workbooks to older versions of Tableau server. And you'll be made aware that you're doing that in this warning message. So I'm going to jump over to a more completed dashboard here. I've added a bit more detail to my Spotify analysis, added some country data. If I click on my country here, the rest of my workbook filters. I'm connected to a published data source, so that's why that happens. But if I click on a country, I can see my top artists, and I can also see their top songs. So in the U.S., Drake is the top artist, and then I can see his top tracks. If I hover over, I also added in some additional information to my tooltip. So the star icon that you're seeing actually is signifying what month an album was released. So in March, Drake released a hip-hop album, and in March his streams also increased. Though if we go down to some other artists here, they didn't actually have an album release, but we'll all know that this was a very popular single that came out. So once I'm happy with this dashboard, I can actually save this in 10.5 to an older version. So now in Tableau 10.5, I'll have the option to export as version. And it will go back to 10.2. But this, again, allows for if other users in your organization don't have the most recent version of Tableau and you want to share the workbook that you've created, you can export it back to a prior version and they'll be able to open it. Again, similar to Tableau server publishing to prior versions, there will be limitations in what can happen. So if you're using a hyper extract, that will probably not work for other users, and if you're using some of the other functionality that we've showcased here. So just some things to keep in mind, but a lot of flexibility in what you're able to share across your organization. I'm now going to publish this workbook. So now you can see I'm logged into our online beta version of Tableau Online, so that's Tableau 10.5. So if I publish this workbook, I already have a workbook, but that warning message disappears because the desktop and server version are matching. And I'm actually going to give you a bit of a sneak preview of something that's coming in Tableau 10.5 server, is the idea of nested projects. So previously you would have had just one folder that you could select to publish your workbooks to. In 10.5, they actually introduced the idea of nested projects, and we'll showcase this a bit on server as well, so that you have better organization of your content. So if you want your users to only be publishing to a self-service folder or an official report, they have that separation available. So I've actually already published this to server, so I'm not going to take the time to publish it now, and I'm going to jump over to that on Tableau Online. So as I mentioned, nested projects, we have all our projects here, and if I drill into it, I then have additional projects here. So official reports, self-service, I can create another project, I can create a project within a project, so a lot of possibilities for organizing your content in a way that makes sense for your organization. I'm going to jump into the official reports here. And on this, you'll have noticed that there's a small database icon with a 1 next to it, saying that there's one data source sourcing this dashboard. And you'll see an icon next to it that has a little like ribbon. And this ribbon represents certified data sources. So I'm going to show you how you can actually certify your data sources, and this is available right now in 10.4. So if I jump to my Spotify streaming data, this connection is a published data source to server. I can see all of the files that it connects to. And if I go to details, it has this certification and says that it's certified by me. So I can edit this because I have the right permissions, but if there's people in your organization who are responsible for publishing data sources that people will either use in desktop or in web authoring. This is a really nice piece of functionality to ensure that people know that this is clean data, this is good data for you to use to build out your dashboards. So it's a simple toggle of certifying the data source and then adding any additional notes about the data source that might be relevant for people. The other thing with certified data sources is if I search for different data sources on my server, the certified data sources will show up first. So again, trying to intelligently direct your users to use the appropriate data. One of the other things I would like to highlight as part of Tableau's server, so I'm going to hop back to demonstrations here and go to my workbook again. Is the enhanced collaboration. So previously in Tableau, it can be a bit difficult to collaborate with people, especially if you're trying to draw out a specific insight. So in Tableau 10.4, there's now the ability to make your selections on a particular thing. So we can click on the United States, future, and I have different songs here. And say I find something really interesting, maybe not necessarily Spotify data, but maybe it's a complex intersection of your sales or marketing data, and you want to share that with people. You don't want to necessarily just take a screenshot and send it to them, but you also want to direct them to that specific intersection. Now in 10.4, I can add a comment, and there's an option here to add a screen capture. So if I click on that, what it does is it does actually take a screen capture. I can post it, but that screen capture is more dynamic. So in the sense that it's not just a static view that they can look at, but it actually takes the filters and reapplies it to the data to show the person the same intersection that you're seeing. So right now I'm looking at this, but if I wanted to see a previous comment and I click on view, now I can see the exact intersection that somebody was looking at when they made the comments. The edit's great. So just some enhanced collaboration abilities on Tableau server that are, as I mentioned, available in 10.4. So I'm going to jump back into my slides here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what to expect in 2018. So at Tableau Conference, there's a session called Devs on Stage where they showcase a lot of functionality that's currently in development. So I'm going to call out some of those features, as well as talk a bit more about Project Maestro. So in desktop, we can expect simplified nested sorting, as this was one of the most requested items on the Tableau community. So anyone who's familiar with sorting on multi-level dimensions will know that it's not always the most intuitive, and you can't always get the right result. So this is an enhancement coming as part of future Tableau Desktop releases. Additionally, there will be more pixel perfection in dashboard creation with the dashboard grid and keyboard nudging. And furthermore, we can expect enhanced mapping capabilities with spatial database joins as well as heat mapping. For servers, there are going to be some enhancements to help manage the server without having to restart the server. Also, a data source page, which will help with data lineage and metadata, as well as some pre-built content that utilizes common data sources such as QuickBooks and can help users get started analyzing their data quickly. If you're interested in any of this content or would like to see it demoed, it is available on the Devs on Stage keynote. So if you did not attend the conference, that's quite all right. You can sign up at TC Live to get access to all of that content for free. Something else that was featured at the conference was Project Maestro. So we're going to take a little bit closer look at this. Project Maestro was announced at TC 16, and this year we were able to actually get hands-on with the tool. For those of you not familiar with Project Maestro, it will be Tableau's offering for data transformation. It is still in development and may be integrated with Tableau Desktop or as its own separate application. It uses Tableau's visual way to analytics to do data transformation, including joins, unions, and data cleansing. It is intended to enable more advanced transformations and give users more visibility into the transformations that have been applied. With the beta released just a few weeks ago, we wanted to demo some of the functionality available. So I'm actually going to jump into Project Maestro and showcase that. So if you're interested to sign up for the beta, I believe there should be information on Tableau's website. If you can't find it, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to direct you to that content. So Project Maestro is a separate application. You'll notice it has a different icon here, but it does have the very Tableau Desktop look and feel. So I'm going to start by adding a connection here, and you'll notice that there's a limited number of connections available. I imagine there will be additional connections that will come, but as this is in beta right now, it is kind of a limited view of it. So I'm going to select a text file, and I'm going to connect to my Spotify streaming data that we were just using. And I'm going to open that up. And something to note about Project Maestro is that it will also be powered by the same engine as Hyper, so we should experience similar performance benefits with Maestro that we will in 10.5. So I have this Spotify streaming data. Since it's a text file, I'm asked some criteria for how I want to load it in. I can also select if there's specific columns that I want to incorporate. It gives me sample values. And there's also some data sampling I can do if I don't want to pull in all of the values. So if I click on this and add a step, add an aggregate, or add an output, these are really my three initial options that I can do. So if I click add a step, I actually get a preview of my data, and it'll load here. And it shows you kind of how many values you have for each of the data points. Feature I really like actually is that if you click on any one of these data points, it'll give you a preview of that data. So if, for example, I click on Till I Collapse here, I can see that it's M&M and it's the different streams, and each of these records is for the different regions. So it's a really nice way of previewing the data that you're loading in. It's also a really good place to notice any kind of discrepancies or any pieces of the data that you wouldn't want to integrate. So I can see here that I have null track names, and if I look at the preview here, the track name and the artist are null. So this isn't really data that's all that helpful for me and not data that I'm interested to bring into my tool. So I can right-click on this and exclude it, and now you'll see that a filter has been applied. I can trace what those changes are that I've applied, and it says that I've placed a filter on my track name to exclude null values. And the rest of the data updates appropriately, so I don't have any null artists anymore because they were all related to the null tracks. So that's just one simple data transformation I can do, but I also want to bring in some additional data. So if I click Add here, and I want to bring in some Excel files now, I can bring in that country list that I brought in before. So in my Spotify streaming, you'll have seen that it was just those two-letter abbreviations, and now my country information, I actually have the abbreviations as well as the full name. So I'm going to create a join here, and I can do this by clicking and dragging, and you'll see a new union or a new join option pop up. And if I hover over the orange and let go, it creates a join. Now, while creating joins isn't anything new to Tableau, I think the power of Project Maestro is showing you the result of that join to make sure that you're doing the correct thing. So right now it's trying to figure it out based on the different naming of the dimensions, and I don't have, region to region or country ID to country ID. So I actually have to create the join. So I'm going to do country ID and region. And I think the thing that's also really nice is the coloration of your data sources. So my orange is my Spotify streaming, my green is my country information, and then this red is the combination of those two. So Tableau really tries to employ those visual cues that they have in desktop and server to this data transformation, which I think makes it really user intuitive. So the piece that I really like about the joins is that you can see what happens if you do a certain type of join. So if I do an inner join on these two data sources, I include 25 of my countries and 900 plus records from my streaming data. But I'm losing 44,000 records of my streaming data and 216 of my country data. Now, I'm not really that interested in countries that I don't have available in my streaming data, so I think a right join is the appropriate join. So by clicking on this Venn diagram here to change the join type, I can see that my join results to the right are updated accordingly. And the visualization below will also be updated to show that the effect of this join. So as this is loading here, we could expect that all of my streaming data would be included, and my country data, I wouldn't expect all of that to be included. I would expect some unmatched values, but there are some unmatched here. And so if I click on these 15,000 and scroll to the right, I can see that the region that's not matching is global, which makes sense because in my country sheet I don't have a global country, but I'm okay with that, but that's not matched. So I think this is a really helpful way that you can analyze your data, and rather than pulling on number of records to a desktop sheet and seeing if data explodes or drops out, this is a really nice visual way for people to create their joins and bring their data together. I'm going to add one more item here, and I'm going to add the album releases. And I'm going to add a step before I join that in. And again, I can see that I have some nulls here, so I'm going to get rid of my null values. And there's also the ability to apply some more sophisticated transformations here. So, for example, if I look here and I have alternative hip-hop in my genre, and I have alternative hip-hop, R&B, and urban, and for me, they're really all kind of similar, and I want to group them in the same way. So I can click on this, and I have some options. So I can filter values, I can group and replace, or I can split values. So I'm going to use this group and replace, and I'm going to use the manual selection. And you can see even Project Maestro kind of highlights the recommended thing that you should be doing or could be doing with this. So I'm going to do the manual selection here. And I now have a group and replace that I can add to. So alternative hip-hop replaces, and I can add in the other items here with this plus button. And so now anytime I see alternative hip-hop, it's going to group together these three values. So this functionality, and I can close out of that. So this functionality can be really useful, especially if you have data that's coming in that you know is categorized somewhat differently across data sources, and you want to group like things together, and you don't want to have to leave it to the user in Tableau Desktop to manually create those groups. So it's an element of data cleansing before it actually gets into the hands of your users, which I think can be really, really valuable. And then, of course, as you can see here, that there's different things applied. So I have a filter, and I can click on the group and replace, and it highlights. So you can track basically everything that you've done to this point. Additionally, I can actually change the name of a particular item. So say that this Ed Sheeran album is Divide, and I want to actually rename that. I can click on it, maybe, edit the value. And maybe I want to just put divide in the parentheses here. Now that's renamed and will flow into the data appropriately. So all of these changes are tracked and can be reverted at any point in time. So now I'm going to create another join here of my album data now that I have this. And I'm going to create a left join, sorry, a right join. So this is now red because of this is like the new kind of source of the Spotify streaming and my country list. So I'm going to create a right join between these so that all of my streaming data has albums associated with it. And once I'm happy with the transformations that I've made, and I'm sure there's plenty others that I can make, I can actually create an output. So by adding an output here, I'm prompted with a screen to name the output. And by default, it will be a Tableau data extract, but I do have the opportunity to create a hyper extract. And I can create a name here, accept, and then actually run the flow. So this is something that they anticipate you will be able to schedule. So if you have data in a few different servers that every day you want it to refresh and run the flow, you can schedule that on server. So I'm not going to run it right now, as it will take a bit of time. But then I can actually go into Tableau Desktop, and I'll create another workbook here. And I'm going to look for one that I've previously created. So let me go into here. And I have created my Spotify data source, and I have the Tableau extract, and that was something that came from my flow. And you can see here it's just an extract, but it has all of the changes that I created. So it's very intuitive to connect directly to Tableau once you've created an output from that data flow. All right, so that's all I have for a very high-level Project Maestro demonstration. I'm sure there's plenty of other functionality that I can get my hands on, but that was just something from my initial play with it. So that wraps up the content I've prepared for today. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you all for joining the webcast today, and have a great day.